Live button. So let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains, and then we can go ahead and get started. We've got a lot to get to today. As you can imagine, the world is continuing to do what the world does, and we've got to talk about it. We're waiting on all of the streams to fire up. It looks like Rumble's alive and well. It looks like Facebook is up. Let's make sure YouTube looks okay, and then we can go ahead and get started. And it looks like we're there. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We've got prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice. And it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got a lot to get into. Want to make sure that everything is alive and well. It looks like we're rocking and rolling. Today we're going to be jumping into talking a lot about Afghanistan. Been spending a lot of time on it the past few days on the channel. And today the Biden administration was out there trying to clean up a little bit, do a little bit of damage control. And so we're going to go through, we're going to take a look at what Jake Sullivan had to say. Jenn Psaki was back in town. Apparently she cut off her little hiatus from her email. She was back in town. There was a press briefing today in front of the media, and they were not happy with the Biden administration. They were sort of catching jabs all over the place, as they should, because what we saw in Afghanistan was quite a debacle, to put it lightly. So we're going to spend some time bouncing around and seeing what the administration is talking about. But interestingly, we're also going to spend some time talking about the new leaders of Afghanistan, the new world power, the Taliban, because they gave a press conference today, and we've got some information about what is going on there in Kabul and Afghanistan as the Taliban is sort of setting up shop. Hey, we're in charge now. An insurrection was successful over there, and there is a new government. So we're going to see what this looks like, the Biden transition over there in the Middle East. So we've got a lot to get to, a lot of clips, and we're looking forward to that. Then in our next segment, we're going to rewind and go back to the Governor Whitmer plot. Remember Governor Gretchen Whitmer, aka Big Gretch Rona, out of Michigan. She was allegedly the subject of this conspiratorial plot by a group of individuals to kidnap her. This was a big story that caught national attention. Lo and behold, some of the FBI agents who were involved in that undercover investigation, a little bit questionable. One of the FBI agents was just arrested and accused of beating his wife, domestic violence. And now we're going to look at another special agent from the FBI that was sending some very inappropriate text messages, sort of asking another FBI informant to kind of bend the rules a little bit. Sounds like it might be a cover-up. And so we're going to talk a lot about that in the next segment. In segment 2, that's involving the case with the gentleman called Brandon Caserta. Talked about his case previously on the channel, and so we're going to go through a motion. His attorney submitted a new document in the federal court, so we're going to be able to break that apart and actually look at the text messages that came from the FBI agent. And then in our last segment today, we're going to check back in with some COVID crimes. We know that we spent some time talking about the key to NYC, and that was where we spent a lot of our time earlier on the week as that is being unrolled today. We're going to bounce around some other parts of the country and see specifically what the federal and local officials are doing, because they are extending more of these COVID restrictions. And then we're going to take a look at some of the big pharmaceutical numbers, because they just posted their quarterly profits, or they have, and we're going to just poke back in and see what those looks like. So if you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where there's a live chat taking place. Big shout outs to Want to Knows over there, Eclectic Prophet. I also see Refanilator is in the house. I saw Zuck was over there, Want to Know, Jeremy Matrita shout outs. We have Lynn Jin is in the house as well. Over on YouTube, shout outs to, we have NJ Pat Dunnett, we have Connor Grifton, we have Stace on the case as usual, and I see Zulu as well. If you're a supporter over at Locals, we really do appreciate that. And you can sign up, well, you can go sign up at the website, but you can use this form when you get there is what I'm trying to say. And this will allow you to submit a question as we go throughout the different segments of the show. If you can, keep them in order. That helps me to make sure I don't miss them. And I'm going to do my best to make sure we get to all of them as many as we can. So I guess without any further ado, we should just jump into it. Shall we? Yes, Rob, we shall. Let's get to it. All right, so we're going to start off with Afghanistan. The Biden administration is out today in front of the media. Of course, Joe Biden is not, but all of his little underlings are. And they're trying to convince or explain to the American people that this was all planned and this was all necessary and everything is going according to the contingencies, all of the various different versions of those that were mapped out. And so we're going to spend some time in this segment bouncing around and sort of checking in with various components of our federal government and get what their take is on this whole debacle. We're going to check in with the Pentagon. We're going to go over to a national security advisor, a guy by the name of Jake Sullivan, who gave a big, long press briefing today. And we're also going to check in with the Taliban because they gave their own press briefing. They're the new leaders of Afghanistan now. And so they're going to tell us how things are going to be, including what level of rights they're going to be given to the new women citizens, I guess, that they have there in Afghanistan. So let's start off by going over to the Pentagon. This is a gentleman by the name of John Kirby, and he was out here today talking to CNN. And so, at this moment in our Afghanistan analysis, we've been sort of watching in awe the slow train wreck that has just been a catastrophe unfolding before our eyes over these last few days. But many people thought, well, okay, we're kind of over the hump here, right? That was the worst of it, kind of the climax of the Afghanistan withdrawal. We probably saw that. We saw people, attaching themselves to airplanes. We saw people hanging on to landing gear. We saw all sorts of chaos and madness. But that has to be over, right? Because it was all just sort of in the war, in the battle leading up to the capture of Kabul. But after that was over, presumably things started to get better, right? And there's nothing else to talk about, right? Let's check in, because I think the answer is no. The answer is wrong. There are still a lot of Americans who need some help. This is what John Kirby, the Pentagon Press Secretary, had to say. Here he is.
There are certainly thousands of Americans. We don't have an exact count. I would say somewhere, best guess, between 5,000 and 10,000 that are near Kabul. There was a message put out by the the State Department today, advising those Americans about how to queue up and how to get to the airport. So that now that security is better, they don't need to necessarily shelter in place, and they can begin movement to the airport for process.
All right, so as many as 10,000 is what that guy was just going to say. As many as 10,000 people. Now, that's sort of a number that we're hearing from the Pentagon. If you check in with some of the other foreign sources, I saw a source from the UK that said it might be as many as 40,000 people. And all of the numbers are being concocted to serve whoever's doing the reporting. And so, it kind of depends, well, who's on visa status and who's, who has applied for refugee status and what different buckets are these different people who want to get out of Afghanistan in, and how many are we sort of, counting as being necessary to save is part of the conversation that's happening here. They're being asked, well, are we done? Are there any other Americans there? You said boots up off the ground, put them on the plane, and are we done? How much longer is this going to continue? Because we know that Joe Biden and his administration have set a deadline that all troops should be out of there by the end of this month. And so trying to gauge, are there any outstanding Americans? They told us this whole thing was planned. It didn't really feel like that. So now we're trying to gauge the extent of the damage. So the press secretary from the Pentagon comes out, 5,000 to 10,000, just a couple of 1,000 American citizens who happen to be over there. Apparently nobody put that into the contingency plan and just sort of said, well, security's a little bit better now. We're not there. So make your way to the airport and queue up. Meanwhile, we just saw what happened yesterday and 2 days ago at the airport. Not particularly inviting if you're an American citizen wondering whether you're going to be beheaded by the Taliban, for example. So that's what the federal government is doing right now. That was the press secretary. And then we're going to change gears a little bit. We've got 4 people we're going to take a look at from the Biden team. That was the Pentagon. Now let's check in with the National Security Advisor directly to President Joe Biden. This guy is very smart, and I don't say that to be facetious. Let's check in. This guy is Jake Sullivan, born 1976. He's an American political advisor, serves as the U.S. National Security Advisor to President Joe Biden. He's been all over the government, worked with Hillary Clinton, Deputy Chief of Staff, worked for the Obama administration, and also worked for Biden when he was U.S. Vice President, served as the Director of Policy, again, for Secretary of State Clinton, And then now he's appointed as the NSA, National Security Advisor. So this guy, he's been around for a long time, very highly educated, very, very sophisticated, unlike yours truly. Don't let the collar on my shirt fool you. I'm basically a troglodyte. This guy's very intelligent, much more sophisticated than I am. He worked for, let's see here, went to Yale University, studied international studies and political science. So he got an Alpheus Henry Snow Prize, whatever that is, Bachelor of Arts, went to Oxford. Oh, and he studied international relations there. So very, very astute. Looks like he got a Marshall Scholarship, maybe a Rhodes Scholarship, Master of Philosophy in International Relations. Also got his JD from Yale Law School, one of the best law schools in the country. Yale Law Journal, Truman Scholarship, Brookings Institutions, and the Yale Center for the Study of Globalization. So with all of those credentials, you can be absolutely positive that this guy has no idea what he's talking about, is so detached from reality that what you're going to hear from him is just a bunch of bloviation, right? It's a bunch of language for all of us dummies, because we're just sort of the stupid masses that need to be herded like cattle into wherever the intellectual superior class decides we need to go. And so they form these little committees, the Yale people and the Harvard people and all of the elected officials. And so pay close attention now, because this guy is very, very smart and sophisticated, way smarter than I am. And so we're going to start off here. And we're going to kind of pick up where the Pentagon Press Secretary left off, right? He said that there may be 5,000 to 10,000 people who are still out there, who are still in Afghanistan, and they are unaccounted for, trying to figure out what to do with them. And so it's kind of a big deal, right? Many people have left Afghanistan or have encouraged leaving Afghanistan and saying, well, it's the Afghani people. If they don't want to protect their country and fight for themselves, if they don't want to preserve and protect democracy, well, then that's their problem. We can just let them stay there and leave them to their own devices. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about American citizens. We're talking about people from this country that should be protected by this country, in particular by the U.S. military. Kind of one of the main reasons that they exist is to protect American citizens domestically and abroad. And so kind of a big puzzle piece in this whole thing. I get it. Afghanistan's confusing. We've only been over there for 20 years. So it's hard to figure out how to get things done over there, especially if you only have a few $1 trillion. Also, you probably need more money than that, and maybe another few decades in order to figure it out. But, so this guy is going to give us some guidance on what this exit plan is. Apparently, somebody forgot about the 10,000 Americans. It's very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. Let's see, though. Okay, so we know that they're forgotten. They're missing, but can we make a commitment to go and get them? Can we be sure that we can go and get them? Regardless of your position on Afghanistan, regardless on your position of whether we should have stayed or left, or whether this was botched or not, we're at a position here today. Now, today, can you make a commitment that we're going to go get those outstanding Americans, maybe 5,000, 10,000 of them, according to the Pentagon, that you forgot about? Here is Jake Sullivan, very brilliant, very smart, very sophisticated. Here's what he has to say.
The mission is not complete by August 31st, and there are Americans and Afghan allies who remain there. Will U.S. troops stay until everyone is out, or will they leave?
So I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. What I'm going to do is stay focused on the task at hand, which is getting as many people out as rapidly as possible, and we will take that day by day.
So you can't commit to bringing back every American.
There's a large number of Christian missionaries.
So you may not have heard that, but as he moves on and doesn't answer that question. He blames it a hypothetical. We'll get back to that. You can hear her back in the background. I think her name is Awisha, and she says specifically, I may have that name wrong, says specifically, so are you saying that you can't commit to Americans? And he goes on to the next journalist in there, and he picks a different question. And he says, well, listen, I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals. That's not a hypothetical. Your Pentagon, who is in the same government as you are there, buddy boy, is on TV saying there are 5,000 to 10,000 Americans out there that are unaccounted for, that we don't know what they're there and it's not like 5,000 or 5,500. It's 5,000 to 10,000. It could be 5, it could be 10. Could be more than that. If you listen to some of other reporting, it could be significantly more than that, depending on what buckets of people you put into it. So it's not really hypothetical. This is a current situation that exists. Unless you can say that we're going to commit to getting everybody out by August 31st, which of course was the deadline that Joe Biden set, then sounds like maybe you aren't committing to it. It's either make a commitment or not. And if you're not going to make the commitment to doing it and just kick this can down the road and call it hypotheticals, that's not a very good answer for somebody so brilliant as this man. You would imagine that the Biden administration would come down forcefully and say, look, yes, we know that there are American citizens there. If there are any American citizens in there and they want to leave, we're going to do everything we can to get them out of there. That's what an actual leader might say. Yes, we understand that there was a contingent of American citizens there that are still in Afghanistan and theoretically in harm's way. We're going to do whatever it takes to get them out of there. And that includes sending back in the force and fury of the entire U.S. military if the Taliban doesn't comply, because there are 5,000 to 10,000 American citizens over there. Rather than saying what he said, well, I'm not going to speculate on those hypotheticals there. Look, if they're still there after August 31st, well, sounds like we'll address that when we get there. And hey, by the way, Jake Sullivan, nobody's really interested in your planning strategies anymore. We saw what happened the last time you said, oh, we got this taken care of. Actually, maybe you should tell us about your contingencies and some of your hypotheticals, because the last set of hypotheticals that you evaluated didn't turn out very well, because we had people hanging off of airplanes from the U.S. Air Force during the evacuation of Kabul. The whole thing was completely botched. Maybe you need a second set of eyes on that. Maybe clue in the American people about what the hell you're doing, because it's not working out well. Check in with your Yale buddies. They probably agree with me on this. All right, so now that he sort of kicked that one down the road, the hypotheticals, it's a hypothetical situation. He goes around the room and he answers a bunch of other, kind of good questions, actually. The rest of the press was unhappy with the performance of this administration today. And so by the time it goes to this gentleman over here, he says, wait a minute. Can you just, did I hear you right there, Jake Sullivan? Did you just confirm for me that you're not going to answer that hypothetical about 5,000 to 10,000 Americans over there? Do you want to answer that again? Here's some clarification questions.
I just wanted to follow up on Ouija's question. Will the U.S. government commit to ensuring that any Americans that are currently on the ground in Afghanistan get out?
That's what we're doing right now. We have asked them all to come to the airport to get on flights and take them home. That's what we intend to do. Yes.
Next question. He doesn't answer it. So can you commit that you're going to make sure that they all get out of there by August 30th? Well, that's what we're doing. We're trying to get him out right now. So he didn't say yes. He didn't say no. It sounds like he's really excited about getting all of them out of there, but he didn't answer the question at all. Now, because I'm a specially trained lawyer, I learned some of these Jedi mind tricks. Not as many of this guy. Obviously, he's way smarter than I am. But he is somebody who, even I could sense that. Somebody as amateurish and as big a buffoon as I am could sense there, you didn't answer that question there, Jake Sullivan. So I think I'm on par with the media. They also are recognizing that the administration is not answering these questions. And so as soon as Jake Sullivan was done, they brought out Jenn Psaki again, old Jenn Psaki, who we thought was going to be on vacation. Apparently she cut that short. And she was out here today triple downing on this. If you're an American citizen over there, good luck to you. You're abandoned. Either get your ass to the airport, figure it out on your own. And by the way, there's no security there anymore. So you actually literally are on your own. And we're hearing stories that the Taliban has about half the airport seized. Good question about what the other half of the airport that the military that is apparently in charge says is under control. They're going to be kind of facilitating an evacuation of 5,000 to 10,000 people, which is a lot of people to get out of there. So now that there are Americans over there, they're saying, gosh, at least I'm a citizen. At least my country back home is going to look out for me. I know that Jake Sullivan just said, well, we're on our own if they can't get us out of here. And bear in mind, it's August 17th. There's not that much time until August 31st. And if they can't get them out of there, what happens? So Jenn Psaki is saying, well, here it is, triple down.
But can you offer any guarantee to the Americans and Afghan allies that if they remain there past the end of the month, U.S. troops will help them evacuate past the end of the month?
Ouija, our focus right now is on doing the work at hand and on the task at hand. And that is day by day, getting as many American citizens, as many SIV applicants, as many members of a vulnerable population who are eligible to be evacuated to the airport and out on planes. And we're going to do that in an expeditious fashion. That is the focus of the President, of our Secretary of Defense, of our Secretary of State, and everybody on our national security team. So that is where we will keep our efforts.
All right, so yeah, Jenn Psaki, who's not as smart as the other guy, is given the same answer as the other guy. So at least we've got some consistency amongst the intellectual people and the rest of us. So we can hear from her as well. No confirmation that they're going to make sure that the American citizens get out of there. This is the wrong answer, obviously. Any American anywhere knows that that's not okay when your government abandons you. If there's 5 to 10,000 American citizens over there, or more than that, the absolute mission of the U.S. government is to make sure that every American who doesn't want to be there anymore is not there anymore, because the country put them in harm's way, incentivized them, and built up the entire infrastructure to bring them over there, which up until the last 6 months, until sleepy Joe Biden made a decision to actually go through with the Trump plan, they were there part of a long-term strategy during the Biden administration. And so as soon as they pick up and run or make that decision, they've got an obligation to make sure that those people get out of there, and they're not doing it. And now, again, I've given the Biden people a pass on a lot of this. I've said, okay, well, Afghanistan, I didn't want to be there anyways. I don't know what the purpose was. And so, all right, not going to come down too hard on Joe for that at all. In fact, I'm in favor of that. Secondarily, we've got the botching of it. Okay, we've got botching. All right, the whole thing was screwed up. It wasn't well planned. Who could have guessed that the Afghanistan forces could be so ineffective? I would imagine that after 20 years, you'd have a little bit better sense of how this whole thing is going to go. I think it's grossly incompetent. But even in the best light, looking at it in a light most favorable to the Biden administration, you might say, well, look, it's the Afghanistan people, right? There's nothing we can do about this. It would have happened to anybody. And so you can't hold that against Biden either. But then we get to the third tier of the analysis. This is where we're talking about the leadership. This is the response to the botching. A leader can make a decision, a leader can make the wrong decision, and a leader, after that happens, needs to come back and own it and make sure that whatever they can do to salvage that mission is done. And here we're looking at it, and the White House 3 times now has confirmed, no, you're kind of on your own over there. We brought you over to Afghanistan, we put you in harm's way, but we're not available anymore. Good luck. Get your butt to the airport if you want to get out. Otherwise, you're the Taliban's property now, I guess. So that's Jenn Psaki and Jake Sullivan. We also heard from the State Department today a very interesting speech today. This came over from Ned Price. This might have been yesterday. And he was talking about inclusivity, right? Now, the new administration is being run by a bunch of people who just live on Twitter and who join whatever the latest cause is. And this guy is now talking about inclusivity now with the Taliban. He's asking that their new government that has a long history of stoning people and beheading them is a little bit more inclusive. This is Ned Price, who looks like a Ned Price from the State Department. Nothing against anybody named Ned Price, but Ned Price from the State Department. This is exactly what he looks like.
Additionally, the UN Security Council issued a joint press statement earlier today calling for a new government that is united, inclusive, and representative, including with the full and meaningful participation of women.
Yeah,
the Council spoke with one voice to underscore that Afghanistan must abide by its international obligations, including to international humanitarian law, and ensure the safety and security of all Afghans and international citizens.
Oh, gosh, that's our State Department right there, folks. That's going up against China and Russia and the Taliban now, the inclusive Taliban, the woke Taliban. We got the woke Marines, so why not have the woke Taliban? Maybe we'll just have pronoun wars instead of shooting wars, which will be a lot of fun. I noticed that all these guys kind of have the same facial features. I noticed this when I was putting the show together. Kind of long, slender faces, all of them. Not that there's anything there. I just thought it was interesting. They all kind of have that same look of just gross incompetence. So anyway, so they're out there in front of the media, and they are doing their best to clean up a little bit of the Joe Biden mess. And the Taliban was also out there giving their version of the events, giving their version of what their country is going to look like now that they have eliminated the U.S. from all future concerns. This is a Taliban spokesperson. We just heard from Ned over there from the State Department. Ned is very concerned about the Taliban being inclusive, and he wants to make sure that women, instead of being beheaded and stoned to death, are now a part of the government. And so the Taliban is out there responding to Ted, and he's actually making some concessions. This whole thing might work out better than anybody thought. This is the Taliban.
I have already mentioned that women will be allowed to work according to the principles of Islam. Women are very respectable to us. We respect them, and they will be allowed to work according to the principles of Islam.
And we are guaranteeing all their rights within the limits of Islam.
Okay. All right. So that's pretty easy, actually. So they are actually going to be granted a bunch of rights. Well, that's a relief. I'm pretty relieved there. Sounds like Joe Biden is, really making it happen in this world. Unity. We're all coming together now. His State Department is going to get their wish, and the Taliban is going to extend rights and privileges, as long as they're within the rules of Islam, of course. And so, because this is a criminal justice channel a lot of the time, we're going to talk about the criminal justice system that the Taliban are going to be bringing into Afghanistan. Let's take a journey, boys and girls. The treatment of women by the Taliban, according to Wikipedia, they're making a note that, hey, the fall of Kabul is now might be changing some of this. It's kind of a dynamic situation, as they note. Over here, we see a member of the Taliban's religious police beating an Afghan woman in Kabul. This was back in 2001. The footage was filmed by somebody else. So there's just a small example of the Taliban justice system. While they were in power, they became notorious for their misogyny and their violence against women. So that's good. Very good for the State Department. Says that, a lot of problems. A gender apartheid. We had various chaperones. Women who are problematic, they face public flogging and execution for a violation of the Taliban laws. You can see that down there. Let me move myself out of there. So public floggings and executions if you are in the Taliban justice system. And so we have to take a look at what some of these laws are, because this could be complicated. This is what their gender policies are, specifically for women. And it starts, my friends, at the age of 8. So from 8 onward, Afghans were not allowed to be in direct contact with males other than close blood relatives, husbands, or in-laws. Other restrictions for women are as follows. So can't go out in the streets without a blood relative, which sounds like a lot of work. I mean, goodness, you got to chaperone everywhere. That's a lot of work. Or without wearing a burqa, which is what you see over here. So that's good justice. So that's a progress for women. Women should not wear high-heeled shoes, as no man should hear a woman's footsteps lest it excite him. Ooh, the Taliban, at least they know what they're talking about when it comes to high heels. Women must not speak loudly in public, as no stranger should hear a woman's voice. There are some situations. Okay, at all ground and first floor residential windows should be painted over or screened to prevent women from being visible in the street. Okay, so that's good. Ned's going to be happy about that. Ned, photographing and displaying pictures of females is also banned. A modification of any names like the word women, for example, that's going to really upset Ned and the left. Women and Women's Garden is renamed Spring Garden. Actually, they might be happy about that one. I'm not sure they might actually enjoy that, because they don't like women anyways, or men. It's all person and people and zims and jurs. And so Spring Garden Ned might like this one. I think I was wrong about this. This is Ned's in favor of that one. Women are forbidden to appear on balconies, and they're also banned from radio, television, and public gatherings. Okay, so that's what the State Department is negotiating with now. So that's going to be good. Very good progress for women. And it sounds like also maybe 10,000 Americans over there, half of which I would guess are women, or maybe a smaller percentage of this given the fact that it's Afghanistan. Okay, so let's say it's 2,000 out of the 10,000 are women. That's their new gender policy. That's good. Good. Really good progress there. Well done. We also have some punishments if you don't abide by those gender policies. Could be problematic for you. Punishments are often carried out publicly. There is formal spectacles that are held in sports stadiums or town squares, and also spontaneous street beatings. We have those in our country too. Civilians lived in fear of harsh penalties. There was little mercy. We have in October 1996, a woman had the tip of her thumb cut off for wearing nail varnish. December, we had another woman seized and punished for violating Sharia code of dress, all under care of the Taliban. Mother of 7 was executed in front of 30,000 spectators in Kabul's Ghazi Sports Stadium for murdering her husband. So they got sport killings there in 1999. Taliban raided a woman who was running an informal school for kids, threw her down a flight of stairs. They broke her leg. Afghan girl named Bibi Aisha. Let's see, she fled violence ordered her to be punished as an example. What'd the Taliban do? Oh, her ears and nose were cut off, and she was left for dead in the mountains, but she survived. So that's nice. A little Taliban justice over there as well. And what else do we have here for the 10,000 American citizens who were over there just kind of floating around? Yeah. More execution. Yeah, for defying the Taliban dictates. So that's what we've got going on over there. 10,000 American citizens. Many people just say, well, it's just the Afghanis. Who cares about them? Well, I do. They're human beings. And I think that the United States certainly has an obligation to clean up the mess a little bit that they made before they leave. It's like if you go camping, you want to leave it better than you found it, right? You don't go there and pitch your tent and throw your disgusting human debris all over the place. You clean up. You left it better than you found it for the next campground. Kind of the same thing. We wanted to make sure that if we're going to leave, we're going to do so responsibly. Make sure at the bare minimum that we have the American citizens who are our citizens, that we are obligated to, that we do need to protect, that we take care of them, lest they be subjected to the Taliban. So now what we have is Mr. Brilliant over here, Jake Sullivan, who once again is going to really empathize with us about this debacle. Here he is. What do we do about all the women over there?
Jake, what do you say to the next generation of Afghan women and children, young girls who face fundamentally different human rights moving forward?
I say that truly, deeply, my heart goes out to Afghan women and girls in the country today under the Taliban. We've seen what they've done before. And that's a very hard thing for any of us to face. But this wasn't a choice just between saving those women and girls and not saving those women and girls. The alternative choice had its own set of human costs and consequences.
Yeah, and he's right about that, right? He is right about that. And the two don't necessarily, right, there are two sides of that coin. He's not wrong. The U.S. has been over there for 20 years, and at some point, a decision has to be made. Either we follow through with the mission or we don't. They made the decision not to do that. I don't have any issues with that. I have issues with leaving 5,000 to 10,000 people over there and acting like this whole thing was orchestrated. It wasn't. The whole thing was a scramble. They're trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes to feign competence, and they're not. All right, so meanwhile, we had Jake Sullivan. We also now have the Taliban. They were out here. We got a message here from their spokesman who is going to be telling us about free speech. So another issue, we know that women and children are going to have a little bit of a hard time in the Taliban criminal justice system. But now we're going to turn to other human civil liberties, other human rights like free speech. Well, are those women who are going to be stoned to death, are they going to be able to at least speak out in their new Talibanic city? Here's what the Taliban leader had to say about that.
دا سوال خو باید د فیسبوک له ادارې سره چې د بیان د ازادي دعوت دوی کوي او دلته خلک د بیان د ازادي.
This question should be asked to those people who are claiming to be promoters of freedom of speech, who do not allow publication of all information. I can ask Facebook company. This question should be asked to them.
So the Taliban's off to a great start. They're doing very well. They've picked up a little bit of the playbook from the Chinese and the Russians. Anytime that they get asked a question about civil rights or civil liberties, they just turn it right around on America and say, what are you asking us about this for? Your country is also in pretty big disarray. All of those civil liberties that you're sort of wagging your finger in our faces about, you don't have those anymore either. And the guy, the Taliban spokesman, he's dead right. He's absolutely right. Now, to a different degree, right? Now, we're not talking about Taliban free speech. We still have the First Amendment. There are a lot of protections there. I'm not trying to poo-poo that. But Facebook is absolutely, and a lot of these big tech companies are acting as the escape valve, the escape hatch. What the government can't censor you over, Facebook has no problem. What they can't what they can't gobble up without a warrant, Facebook can just kind of turn that stuff over in many cases. And so we're seeing the private government exception, the private corporation government exception to this. And so he is absolutely right. A lot of free speech suffered over the last year. It continues to suffer. We have chilling effects all over the place. Department of Homeland Security just came out. We talked about this in a bulletin yesterday, saying that if you are kind of, promoting conspiracy theories or on forums, or you're somebody who might question the coronavirus, or you might question the election or any of those things, you might be an extremist. You might be somebody that needs to be monitored by the DHS. And so if you don't think that that chills speech, well, maybe you should go live with the Taliban because you're very similar to them. Similar ideologies, the Taliban and Mark Zuckerberg. I think that's pretty obvious. Now, as dangerous as the Taliban seems to be, there is some good news. They're kind of like children. Here's a quick image, a quick video. They actually found an amusement park there in Kabul, and they're having a good time as Joe Biden and his team are scrambling around trying to put out all of these little fires, these smoldering fires that they have created. They are, in the Taliban world, having a great time. Here's how they're celebrating. I don't know what those are. I think those are sheep or little unicorns or something like that. Inappropriate for grown men to be doing that. Not appropriate. But they're the Taliban, so they're going to do what they can do. You know, I went through the Sharia law a little bit, and I didn't see anything there about riding little ponies, but that's the Taliban. Now, it wasn't just the little unicorns that were colorful and purple and pink. It's also the bumper cars. Here's the Taliban out there with the bumper cars just bumping into each other. Now that the country is theirs, it was literally so easy. They're not even mourning anybody. There's no mourning. There's no dead Talibanese people. There's only a lot of fun, a lot of joy here. Oh my gosh, that is way too loud. Let me turn that down. Here. So they're just bumping into each other, having a great... This is the Taliban, folks. This is what we're running away from. This is our U.S. military. Oh, my goodness. All right, so enough of that. Something was wrong with that audio. Let's bring this back up. All right, so it's not just the amusement parks. It's not just a lot of fun out there with the Taliban. We, folks... It's now time to be concerned about this. Well, not really. You'll notice that they've also got some new equipment here. They practice sports in the gym hall in the presidential palace. So the Taliban, it's sort of like that scene from Rocky. They're gearing up, like in case the United States comes back. They're really, really, preparing for the next big fight. And this is what it looks like. Brace yourself. This is intense.
Academy headquarters, Razakna.
What the hell is this? What is this? What is that? Oh, this is pathetic. This is just the worst. First of all, folks, we have nothing to worry about, okay? These guys have zero coordination. They're not doing any bench presses. They're not doing any squats. I didn't even see a squat rack in there. There might be a squat rack in there. I don't see one. There might be a leg press. I don't know. Deadlift. I'm not seeing anybody do deadlifts. Did you see the guy doing the overhead presses with the reverse hand grip? I mean, it's amateur hour. So I'm not particularly worried about the Taliban here. I think any of you out there with little sisters, I think that they could probably fare quite well against any one of these guys, which begs the question about what the hell happened with the military and the Afghan army. So certainly concerning, but I think we're going to be okay. Now, speaking of equipment, since the Taliban has a new gym, they've got new bumper cars, they've got new unicorns. They've also got some other stuff that is a little bit more concerning. Here is, once again, Jake Sullivan acknowledging that, yeah, they do have a lot more than that. They've got a substantial amount of U.S. military gear.
Thank you. What happens to the billions of dollars worth of weaponry that the U.S. gave Afghanistan? Does the U.S. have a plan for that, or does it remain in the Taliban hands?
We don't have a complete picture, obviously, of where every article of defense materials has gone, but certainly a fair amount of it has fallen into the hands of the Taliban. And obviously, we don't have a sense that they are going to readily hand it over to us at the airport. Yes.
Thank you, Jake.
So there you go. It's just gone. All of it's gone. No plan, no contingency. They're just, we kind of don't really know where it is, and they're not going to give it back over to us. So just consider it gone. Thanks for asking. That's not our equipment anymore. That's the Taliban's now. And so in one final surprising tiny little clip, here is Jake Sullivan once again confirming that Joe Biden, who has been on vacation, remember he was over at Camp David, flew back yesterday on Monday to give a very short 18-minute speech, take no questions whatsoever, in order to convey and communicate his tremendous leadership, right? This was a man who has been in office longer than I've been alive in some shape or form. And he is somebody who's apparently going to help America navigate through the very, very tumultuous times. Joe Biden flew back 18 minutes, no questions, flew back to Camp David. And everybody on Twitter is telling us that he's working so hard. That's not why we're hearing from him. He's meeting with his advisors and he's coordinating the withdrawal, which was already very planned and already very well prepared for. So they're scrambling now to figure it out. That's why he's not around anymore. So you would imagine that the president, after this all started unfolding now, would at least be on the phone with world leaders, would be on the phone with our allies. Hey, guys, yeah, I know that didn't go well. Sorry about that. France, thanks for your help. UK, thanks for your help. Canada, I think you helped a little bit. Thanks, everybody. We kind of botched this, and if there's anything else that we owe you, let us know. Send us a bill. If you got any support over there, if you got any of your citizens over there, maybe we'd be available to help if you ask nicely, something like that, right? That would be the bare minimum. A real leader would say, we're going to do everything we can to make sure that we clean up after ourselves before we leave. But is Joe Biden doing that? Is he on the phone with any of these world leaders? Here is Jake Sullivan telling us no.
Two questions for you. One, has the president spoken to any other world leaders since Kabul fell to the Taliban?
Sorry, I was looking at the wrong person. He has not yet spoken with any other world leader.
Two questions.
What? Okay, so he's not even talking to anybody. So Sleepy Joe is just sleeping, man. He's on vacation. He's at Camp David, and he can't be bothered with any of this stuff. So leave Joe alone. Let's take a look at some questions and some super chats that are coming in. We're going to start off by going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and I have to sign back in again. Oh, this thing. You know, it does this every now and then, and it does it when I least expect it, when I'm live, right in the middle of a show. But that's all right. We're going to get this situated right here. If I can get to it. Hold on, my friends. All right, we're almost there. It's loading now. And we've got a lot of questions here today. So let me just cue these up. All right, here we go. Apologies for that. We've got John Trog Halgren says, hey, Troglodyte, are we allowing those Americans in Afghanistan to repatriate with COVID ID? Hard, sarcastic cough there. As far as Sullivan goes, I've seen intellects like him allow their homes to flood because they didn't know how to shut a water off to a broken appliance. Yeah, totally. Remember the big difference between intelligence and intellect? Yes, that is from John Trog Halgren. John, that's a pretty intelligent comment. You might be too sophisticated for this show. So I appreciate that, though. Thanks for educating us. I didn't understand most of that, but maybe some people in the audience did. We have the DOD is incompetent, says that you burn the documents and evacuate the civilians before you withdraw. Yeah, that makes sense. Donald Trump needs to do a Stalin and purge the executive department when he comes back to power. Peacefully and politically, a good purge is in order, no question. A peaceful, politically motivated, accomplished purge. We have Sergeant Bob says, Sullivan took his press conference lessons from Circle Back and Sleepy Joe. Ignore a question and move on. Thanks for recognizing the foolishness of the intellectuals. We know what BC is and MS is more of the same. PhD is piled high and deeper, and so it goes. Yeah, all of these people, they just think that they have it all figured out because they're so damn smart, and that they have control over all of the little permutations and variables, and that they can micromanage all of the different facets of everything. And they can't. It's incompetence. They've never been able to do it. They're never going to be able to do it. They're excited about AI and artificial intelligence so that they can maybe use those tools to do it. But I think that it's never going to happen, nor should it. It's not the way it should be. Robute is here, says this train wreck probably has become worse considering how many of the State Department personnel think they are smart from the degree, yet they are stupid. Genius is limited. Human stupidity is infinite, considering the stupidity of the U.S. government. I don't know how bad it will get. Well, that's part of the problem, right? When you isolate your look, I'm not an anti-intellectual, right? I like intelligence. I like learning. I like sophisticated conversations. I like science. I'm a big supporter of science and all of those things. What I am opposed to is the intellectual literati, right? It's the intelligentsia. It's the people who go to Yale and Harvard and they isolate themselves and they create these little bubbles of sycophants where they create these commissions and they all pat each other on the back and say, that's great, that's a good idea. And it turns out they're not. But they're all in charge, and so they don't actually get any real-world intelligence or real-world experience. And what happens? Afghanistan happens. What happens? COVID happens. It's the same people who think that they have it all figured out, and they don't. And they have very, very problematic unintended consequences when they try to implement their will by force, which they're doing right now. Sergeant Bob is here, says, if President Trump were in, it would never have happened. B, if it did happen, he would be right there talking to the press with a plan. Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think it ever would have happened this way. If it would have started, and listen, also, if it would have happened, I would imagine Donald Trump would have been just eliminating anybody who was a part of the problem. Anybody who misled him would have been fired. He had no problem firing people and making them the scapegoat, which is exactly what should happen if you think this is problematic. If you think what happened here was that our entire military industrial complex, all of our intelligence apparatus has been misleading us for the last 20 years, well, then you might want to see some people resigned or eliminated politically from their positions. Or we can just go, oh, sorry, God. Oh, shucks, right? I forgot to get the milk on the way home and just paper over the whole thing, which is what they're doing. Soul Viking is here, says, I wonder if they took the inclusive gay pride flag down from over the embassy while they were finishing burning the documents and turning out the lights. Yeah, it's pathetic. It is pathetic, Soul. You're absolutely right. It's pathetic. LT13 is here, says, I couldn't focus on what Ned was saying because his weird teeth smack. Maybe that was the plan. Go smack your teeth and people won't be able to actually hear what you say. We have another one here from, yeah, I know. Ned has a lot of problems just in general. Over here we have John Halgren says, the Taliban has been inclusive for years. They behead everybody. Yeah, whoever. They don't care. They don't care where you're from. They'll just behead you just like everybody else. The Taliban is here, says, hey, Robert, have you heard that leaders around the world, especially Jacinda Ardern, begged us to uphold women's rights? Hey, leaders, what are you going to do about it when we implement Sharia law? Taliban is poking fun at world leaders on the show. We have Ghost Gunner, says, Rob, I find this a little misleading. The people left there are not all American citizens. From my understanding, they are including Afghani citizens who have worked with the American Armed Forces in the 10,000 people. These are American people employed via contract work who are anti-Taliban, and the U.S. promised to evacuate and are not all American citizens. Additionally, the Taliban has seemed to be cooperating with the U.S. to allow for evacuations. That's for Ghost Gunner. Yeah, and so look, if that goes smoothly, I'll be very surprised. But if it does, if the Taliban's just like, yeah, anybody who wants to go, we're in charge now. This is a fully legitimate government, and we've got a fully legitimate airport. We're recognizing passports and all of these things. Then, okay, I guess that works. And I don't want to quarrel over the number. I think if it's 5,000, let's say, people who are in the Afghani citizens who worked with American Armed Forces but not actually citizens, and the other 5,000 are American citizens, I think the underlying point remains the same, that the U.S. should be a little bit more committed to making sure that any American citizen who wants to get out of there is getting out of there. And what we saw from Jake Sullivan and Jenn Psaki, I think, left a lot to be desired. You're not giving any security in anything that we heard in that prior clip to any American citizen after September 1 or on September 1. And I think that's where my critique is. But thank you for that differing perspective there, Ghost Gunner. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for submitting that. We have LT13 says, I have several friends who served, and it's in Sean Perrell's book. You think the women thing is bad, you should hear what they do to boys. Yeah. Kareem165 says, women's rights under Islam is an empty set. When my grandmother died, women were forbidden from attending the burial. That was in Canada. Wow. Interesting. Boneless Ravioli is here, says, I heard we left behind an AK-47 and a Toyota pickup truck for everyone in the Taliban. Very, very inclusive. Yes, that's true. It is very inclusive. Very nice. Yeah, it sounds like almost reparations for the Taliban, doesn't it? John Halgren is here, says, it's pretty clear to me now that the Afghan culture doesn't care about women no more than the Taliban do. If they did, they would still be fighting to keep these pigs out of their country. Sad day for the women of Afghanistan. That's from John Halgren. Yeah, or it's exactly what the Afghan army wanted, you know. Did they want the woke Marine? Did they want the Kardashians? Did they want Caitlyn Jenner, Governor Caitlyn Jenner, running Afghanistan? Probably not. They probably have a lot more in alignment with the Taliban than with the average American citizen, I would guess. Versus, you know, go to the campus of Berkeley, pick up an average Taliban and an average Berkeley person, and compare that with the average Afghanistan person. Who are they going to be closer in alignment to? 100% the Taliban person, obviously. So they're just kind of in alignment with it. That's why, hey, Joe, you're here. Long time no see. Yeah, here, take my guns. You need them. We have here from John Halgren says, it's pretty clear to me that we already read that one. Next up, we've got Spawn Dog says, how does one find a beautiful bride in Afghanistan if you can't see them? It's a good question. I think it's by force, right? I think it's by gun. You just sort of conquest and you seize your bride, or it's by arranged marriage between different parties. Edon Testis here says, the Taliban spokesman was just as clear as these U.S. spokesmen. Women will be allowed rights according to the laws of Islam. The laws according to whom? To Islam, whatever Taliban says they are. We have John Halgreen says, I'm dying. The tallies just dunked on Facebook. Yeah, they did. Totally. They did. The tallies dunked on Facebook. Yeah, they did. They did. And they're right about it, actually. Their criticism is warranted. Yeah, why is Facebook so limiting on free speech? It's a good question. I'd like to know the answer. I agree with the Taliban on that. Yeah. I'm in total line. I totally agree with the Taliban that Facebook is terrible. All right, we have another one from Thunder7 says the Taliban equals, gonna get flagged for something there. Taliban is misogynist, but most of the UAE, including Saudi Arabia as well, and all of the others have no rights, but they're not criticized because they are part of the wealthy elite. Sharia law is Sharia law, no matter what country it's enforced in. Such hypocrisy. Well, I'm not a fan of any of that, but apparently the Biden administration has a lot of hopes that the Taliban is going to be very inclusive. We'll see. CNN is trash says, Rob, have you seen the meme of Clarissa Shields not wearing a burqa one day, the next day wearing a burqa? Violent, but mostly peaceful, part 2. That's from CNN is trash. Yeah, we played that yesterday on the show. It was quite a change. One day, boom, entire outfit change. Ref Fanalator is here, says, just a little reminder that they need a new war now. So if you match Biden's domestic terrorist list, which being a skeptic or a libertarian, be prepared for the January 6th treatment. It's official now, right? It's from DHS. They have confirmed that. John Halgreen says, tilt a whirl of goats and grown Taliban man. You actually showed that date night in Kabul. I was going to make a goat joke, but I chose not to because, John, I knew you were out there and that somebody else would do it. There it is. Shade says, tuning into your show on most days, your comedic sarcasm is relieving and hilarious. Spicy times and truly how most of us feel as well. Thank you, Rob. Thanks, Shades. You know, sometimes I try to be a little bit serious and I just have too much fun just making fun of these people because it's so idiotic that I can't even help it. We have Edon Tess says bumper cars. Well, at least that guy had his AK-47, in case of road rage. That's right. You don't want to be in a bumper car battle with the Taliban. Let me tell you that, especially if they've all got AK-47s. I mean, they'll shoot at you. They won't hit you, obviously, so you're okay there. But it can be a little bit scary if you're not familiar with bumper-to-bumper combat. LT13 says, you have got to see the Afghan military do jumping jacks. Yeah, I did. I've seen that a long time ago. Let's see if we can pull that up while we're just going through this. Well, just because we're having a little fun today. Let's see if we can grab this one going. Look at this. Here is the Taliban doing jumping jacks. Oh my goodness. No, this is the Afghanistan army actually doing jumping jacks with a U.S. soldier here. Really, really bad time. Yeah, really bad time. And look, it's not in good taste to make fun of the Taliban, right? But of the Afghanistan army. But it's like, folks, what have we been doing for 20 years? We're listening to our elected officials tell us this is all great. Everything's according to plan. And we saw the opposite of this stuff. These people are liars and they should have their noses rubbed in this. They've been telling us it's all under control. Joe Biden flew over there many times, met with the Afghanistan troops many times, sat down with the president. Hey, in the Oval Office, hey, everything's all great. They're doing a great job. I stand by them. Told us as little as a month ago. No, they have 300,000 troops. This is all good. They're as armed as any modern army. And then this is what we get. They should have their faces rubbed right in it because it's embarrassing. And they're or held accountable in some way. But we're not going to get that. So the only thing we can do is poke fun at him. Nadarb says, don't fall for it, Taliban. It's a trap. Look what happened to America after we allowed women to vote. It will not end up anything like the description they sold you on. But seriously, this is why China and Russia can get along with them, because they don't make these ridiculous demands about how they need to change their culture and way of life or else. This is an ancient art form called diplomacy. That's from Nadarb. Nadarb, yeah. We have next up, John is here, says, this dude has an RPG in the weight room. That's a rules violation. Well, maybe it's sort of like his, it's part of his routine. You know, he's Taliban. You got to be able to carry that rocket all over the place. So it's part of his cardio, you know. Some people wear the weight vests. He carries an RPG in. Want to Know says, how is Kamala going to hold meetings with the Taliban in a burqa? Not allowed to talk, hopefully not laughing either. Could we pass these rules for politicians like AOC, Pelosi, Almar? It is their administration. We have another one here from Jeremy says, it was a huge mistake to give up control of Bagram Airfield, which was the only safe airfield long enough to fly large aircraft out without the risk of getting shot down. The military already had a well laid out plan to pull everything out of the country, but it was ignored. Normally, if the U.S. can't extract equipment, they will at least destroy it so the enemy doesn't get our secrets. My heart goes out to any U.S. citizen who were stuck there in Kabul. Hope they can get out safely. That's from Jeremy. Me too, Jeremy. Me too. We do have fun here, but we got to remember, right? These are serious people. These are people. These are human beings. Nadarb says, those dudes were having themselves a good time. Banging weights brings a whole new meaning to radical Islamist. Rad, bro. Oh, no. We have Doodle Doo says, why am I having Benghazi deja vu, except in real time and 10,000 times worse? You know it's bad when CNN, MSNBC, and the press pool are turning on the Biden administration. You're right. It is that bad. And they are. That observation is accurate. There's no way they can defend this train wreck, but no doubt the Pentagon, State Department, Intel, all of them are going to make Biden their fall guy, even though they are all responsible, especially the ones who have more concerned about being woke than actually awake doing their jobs. That's from Doodle Doo. Great comment. Yeah, I like that. Woke versus being awake. That's from Doodle Doo. We got a couple more here. Greg Gutfield is here, says, we should have known the Biden would fail this withdrawal. That is how we got Hunter. Well, why isn't Joe talking to Hunter? He's the smartest man he knows. Maybe he can solve all of this for us. Lee Fibbug is here, says Biden is isolated, no cabinet members around him, no Kamala standing behind him. You would expect Blinken to be next to him when he faces the public, but no. They're making him own this 100%. What is going on in the background? It's a good question. It's a good question, and the Republicans are now floating around the 25th Amendment. Lots of interesting things happening. We have Robute says, really, the State Department is begging the Taliban to give the heavy equipment back. Are you serious? Why would the Taliban give their equipment back? They wouldn't. To be optimistic, the Taliban does provide laughs with them humiliating the U.S. government, who is only able to spy on its citizens, oppress and lie to their citizens with footage of gym equipment and bumper car play. It's ridiculous. And yeah, the last villain is here, says, it wasn't a failure of the Afghan force. It was ours. Could they fly the planes? A few. Could they fix the planes? No. They picked up and cleared bases without even alerting the Afghans. Jenn Psaki said, we're doing everything to undo the work at the briefing today. Freudian slip. I didn't see that, the last villain, but I don't doubt it. Edon Tess says, well, the joke is on the Taliban because before the U.S. left, we took all the keys to the ignition for the Humvees and the attack helicopters. That would be a good thing, but I'm sure that's not true. Robute says those intellectuals in humanities are bloody useless. They only spread CRT. Their only university degree I recognize is STEM and humanities, and they need to be reformed and purged of CRT. Also, isn't it weird that the Taliban account is allowed a Twitter account, but not Donald Trump? Also, have you heard that Australia is building their first concentration camps for quarantine? It's like the worst. It's like the worst. Serious. Everything is just bad in that comment. It's a great comment, but there's a lot of bad observations in the world. Yeah, Taliban's on Twitter. Donald Trump's not, former president. Intellectuals and humanities are bloody useless. Absolutely true. We also have Australia's building their concentration camp. So it's just a whole smorgasbord of doom. I love it. NY Renal MD says, where is our Speaker of the House? Where is her outrage for Afghanistan? Our president, now that the woman will be enslaved for another 1,000 years. They're nowhere to be found. They are just hiding. It's like when Cuomo from CNN, the dumber of the Cuomos, goes on vacation. Like that was planned? No, it wasn't. Doodle Doo says, is it terrible that I was kind of hoping for the Taliban guy on the exercise bike to get his dress caught? Robes and treadmills are in a good combination, guys. Just saying. Talk about a juxtaposition. Yeah, that's hilarious, Doodle Doo. Look, I'm all for, fitness. I support it. I guess the Taliban are on the fitness train. Spawn Dog says Biden is really screwing up our country. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Not doing so good. We have Ghost Gunner says, I hate hearing about the 25th when it comes to Biden. Kamala is going to be worse. Yeah, she's also a walking disaster. Lauren S says, serious question. Is all that training equipment we brought over, like tanks, guns, etc., now property of the Taliban? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We could file a claim in a court here in the United States, I guess, or the U.S. military could submit a request over to them, but it's the Taliban's now. All of it. All right, let's take a look over at some super chats that came in from YouTube, actually. Here, Eddie Oliver says, within the limits of Islam means floor sweeper and or tea getter. Talking about women and their rights in the new Afghanistan Taliban. We have both very important positions in the new administration. Yeah, that's right. Floor sweeper, tea getter, probably a lot of other awful things. That was from Eddie. Good to see you, Eddie. We have DG McBride says, the clip of the Taliban working out looks like any gym the first week of January every year. It's true. It really does. It looks like that also when it's summertime and all of the high school kids come out and they got nothing to do. So they're at the gyms all day on Saturday and they're all just like, bumping around like bumbling children. It's a lot of fun. Brody Z says, I never knew you could go from being the most popular president in history to possibly being the most hated in less than a year. Yeah, pretty good record time. It's been like less than 8 months. Joe Biden, not good. Eddie's here says, do you remember a few shows back when I mentioned that these decisions were being made from the top down? I think my point was proven. Yeah, I think you're right, Eddie. And I think presumably you're meaning it's from Biden and trickling down, or I'm not sure if you mean that there's somebody even above that who's making these decisions, but either way, it is trickling down. Kelly Selnow is here, says, throwing in some extra love because the locals chat is on fire. Thank you for that, Kelly. Do appreciate it. Says, oh, and 30% for YouTube. That's for what you do. YouTube, yeah, they host this nice forum. We're able to have these conversations, and so they take their cut. But I do appreciate that, Kelly. Thank you very much for that. It does go a long way. We have next up from Garp. He just super chatted. Says Trump 2021 is the message there from Garp1966. Thank you very much, GARP. And I think that's it for the questions on that segment. Many of those came from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Outstanding questions. Really appreciate all the love and the super chats over on YouTube as well. You make it so that the show is dynamic and a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it. All right. So we're going to change gears, jump into the next segment. We've got, Governor Whitmer. The Whitmer Plot. Remember this? This was when Big Gretchrona, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, out of Michigan, was allegedly under the surveillance of a group of guys who wanted to kidnap her. And the FBI kind of allegedly infiltrated this very secretive group and then busted them at the last minute and said, wow, they were really going to do this thing. They were actually, this group of guys, these white supremacist sort of militia members, were going to go and literally kidnap the governor. And we covered the story. We went through the police report, went through a lot of the material that we had at the time. And as the case goes on, defense attorneys get their hands on it and they start digging in. And they want answers to very important questions. And as this case is unfolding, very troubling information is coming about from the FBI showing that they may have been involved in a direct cover-up. You can be the judge of that, but cover-up, I think, is the most appropriate word here. And we're going to take a look at text messages that came from a special agent, FBI agent, over to an undercover informant promoting that lie. Let's get into it. The headline comes over from Michigan Live, says that a dark shadow cast on the probe of the Whitmer kidnap plot now that the FBI told an informant to lie and delete texts, according to an attorney. We're going to take a look at this attorney. His name is Michael Hills. He drafted a document on behalf of Brandon Caserta, he's representing him, asking a federal judge ordering the government to provide all discovery. I'm going to explain what that is here in a minute. The government has said it's already provided a bunch of this stuff and you don't need any more of it. All right, so what's happening here? We are in a situation where the defense is fighting over discovery. It's called disclosure. It looks like a motion like this. And this is being filed out of the Western District of Michigan for the Southern Division. Brandon Caserta is one of the guys who is a part of that group. Remember, there was a group of 6 to 8 of them, maybe as many as 10. A lot of questions about who really made up the group, because now, allegedly, some of those people may have been FBI agents or undercover secret informants, government informants. And so what the defense is doing now, that Brandon Caserta has been charged with this conspiracy, is they're taking the evidence that has been provided and they're dissecting it. And they're identifying where there are some gaps. They say, hey, thanks, government. You gave us a lot of this information, but we need more. We're going to look into that one little spot a little bit more in depth. And so back in July, this defense lawyer filed this motion on July 12th and said, listen, we filed a motion to compel discovery. Remember that discovery in a criminal case, it's all with the government. They have all of the evidence. They have the police reports. The police did the work. They have all, chemical testing they do in DUI cases or drug cases. They have all of the body camera footage. They have all of the witness statements. They have it all. So if you're a defendant in a defense position, you're at a disadvantage. You need the government to give you the stuff that you need to build your defense. And so if they have something that they're not going to give to you, you have to compel them to do that. You have to go to the judge and you have to say, listen, judge, I'm asking you, compel them, demand them to give us that information. We need it for our defense. And so they did that, of course, back in July, and it is still being kicked around. Back in July, the defense attorney filed the motion to compel, and they wanted the court to give them certain data. The cell phone data right here regarding confidential informant, AKA Dan. This undercover person named Dan, they want his cell phone data, as well as cell phone data for FBI agents called Henrik Impala and Jason Chambers. They want all of their cell phone records. To support this request, Brandon Caserta and the defense lawyer, they produced a small portion of text messages between Dan, this undercover person, Dan's FBI handler, who is Jason Chambers, and Dan. Okay, so we have this secret message going back and forth. We're going to explain this out a little bit further. These text messages are indicating that the FBI was pushing their paid agent to actively recruit people into an overt act in furtherance of a conspiracy. They're saying here that they need cell phone records from FBI agents, 2 of them, Impala and Chambers, and they want to know what the conversations were between those 2 special agents and this other person called Dan, who is an undercover informant. They say we need this information. It's very important to our case. Brandon Caserta is being charged with a conspiracy here. There may be some involvement from government officials, particularly the FBI. So the government responds now and says, well, the government suggests for the following reasons that you don't need this stuff. They say this information is not relevant. They say it's overbroad. They say it's protected by an informant privilege. You don't get access to that anyways. It says the government will review the material and then internally decide if the material is discoverable. And they say, well, it's also voluminous, right? There's a lot of discovery. It's like, oh, there's so much of it, so we don't need to give it to you. So the government says, well, we have all of that data. I mean, of course, we have the special agent's cell phone records, but we don't want to give it to you. It's not relevant. It's too broad. It's already protected information, and it's too much. It's voluminous. So what we'll do is we'll take a look at it at the FBI. We'll let you know if you need it, and we'll give it to you. Well, the defense says, no, we're not going to do that. That doesn't sound good. That's a pretty bad deal. So we actually do want this. Specifically, the defense is asking the court to order the production of this stuff. All communication between Special Agent Impala and Chambers and Dan regarding this investigation, so that you see that they're narrowing this down. The government says, oh no, it's too voluminous. You're asking for way too much. And they say, no, it's not too much. We just want a couple things. Just the messages between Impala and Chambers regarding this investigation, as well as Dan's communication between himself and anyone else regarding this investigation, whether it's encrypted on chat or Facebook direct or text messages or photos or any other thing else regarding this investigation. So we don't need an entire phone dump or an extraction. We don't need it all. It's not overbroad. It's not too voluminous. It's not lacking in specificity. It's exactly what we need. So go get it for us. Now, the government is responding and saying, well, It says that we have not provided enough evidence to demonstrate a need for that information. Government says, well, you really haven't explained why you need it, or you haven't really met your burden. The only thing you offer is an exchange between an informant and an agent. Yeah, so what? They talked. So what? So what? The special agents had a conversation with Dan. Doesn't matter. Counsel stands by his motion. Defense counsel says that Dan, the secret agent or the undercover person, is the center of all activity, and that the agents are pushing Dan to actively recruit and entice people into a conspiratorial agreement. Dan is at the heart of the case, and they say fundamental fairness says we got to get access to that. They reference an old case that said that when disclosure of an informer's identity or the contents of his communication is relevant, it's essential that the privilege that protects the informant give way and that the defendant get the benefit. So the government comes out here and says, well, Dan, he was involved in this, but you don't need any of that information. He's just an informant. It's just an agent. They're just having conversations about this. And by the way, if you want access to that, too bad. It's privileged because of informant privilege. Well, the defense comes back out and says, by the way, Dan happens to be the center person of this agreement. And it's not like you guys were having conversations about lunches or where you were going to meet up incidentally to the underlying conspiracy. This was the entire conspiracy. The FBI, according to this defense attorney, was specifically recruiting Dan or coaching Dan to recruit other people to be a part of the conspiracy. So Dan was an agent of the FBI, which is essentially a entrapment. It would be like an FBI agent going and actively recruiting and enticing people to commit a crime they would not have otherwise done. The FBI is not doing it. They're using Dan to do it. And the defense is saying, we need that information because that implicates the entire FBI. The government, of course, is, oh, no, you don't need that. It's a fishing expedition. This is all too voluminous. Defense attorney comes back out and says, listen, we have already provided ample support for this original discovery motion, but we're happy here to provide even more evidence in further support of this motion. Goes on, as described more below in detail, counsel has found even further text messages from FBI handlers, this is big, demonstrating that the FBI asked Dan to destroy his text messages and then lie to Pete Musico, founder of the Wolverine Watchmen, and accuse an innocent individual as being an undercover federal agent spying on Mr. Musico. Okay, one more time. We have the FBI now is communicating to Dan, special agents, this is the allegation, going out to Dan, and Dan is now going and recruiting other people. When Dan goes and has a conversation with some of the Wolverine Watchmen, they get concerned that maybe somebody's working with the feds, and the FBI agents tell the FBI Fed informants to blame somebody else. Okay, the text message between Dan and S.A. Impala. This is a PDF. Counsel does not have the native data. Counsel continues to believe these text messages was inadvertently disclosed. Can you see that? As the government continues to oppose disclosure of these communications. So the lying government accidentally gave them these text messages. The red redacted located on the text message was applied by counsel and blocks Dan's full name and phone number that are contained on the unredacted text, meaning that the defense got this material unredacted because the prosecution just missed it. They went through all of their evidence and they would disclose some of it and then keep some of it behind the curtain. Then this got disclosed. Defense attorneys look into it. They say, oh my gosh, they didn't even redact it. So they just didn't see it. And it ends up in the defense attorney's hands. Their lies. We're going to look at them here. All defense counsel in this case have had Dan's personal information for many months. The text message reads as follows. You'll notice redacted. So we have Dan who's responding to one of the FBI agents, says, getting it now. FBI agent responds, thanks. What's the schedule for tonight? Dan says, continue live fire shoot house. We're going back to the hotel tonight. I think I'm going to get pressed. What's he talking about? He's going to get pressed by Joe, Pete Musico. They talked to Paul 2 weeks ago. They're thinking I'm a Fed. So the people who are part of the Watchmen Wolverines or whatever, they think that Dan, this guy, is a Fed. Dan says to the FBI agent, I've got a handle on it. Don't worry. FBI agent says, shoot, you're going to be okay? How did this happen? Be sure to delete these. Talking about these text messages, right? This is from an FBI agent telling an informant, cover up your messages. Dan says, I've been good. It's all good. Pete and him just being crazy. Paul told him, I'm good. FBI agent says, copy. Best thing to do is deny and accuse somebody else like Trent. Pick on Trent here. Yes, sir. I have Croft coming to me to train, Ty's place. Says, yes, sir. FBI agent says, well, cover this up and blame somebody else. You're not the person responsible here. Incriminate somebody else, which is passing liability, right? So what if they say, oh, well, they're the feds, so we're going to go kill that person then, or we're going to go abuse that person? Here's this broken down a little bit more. The text thread states that Joe Morrison and Pete, they talked to Paul. They believed that Paul and Dan were federal agents. So FBI says, you going to be okay? Be sure to delete these things. Joe Morrison, Pete Musico, and Paul Bellar, they're original members of the Wolverine Watchmen. They were charged in Michigan State Court with multiple felonies. So they're all part of the same deal. This is a different case. Now, second says, copy, accuse somebody else like Trent. Defense attorney says, well, first, the special agent is advising Dan to delete information on his phone. This is another reason that Caserta needs the information, because other information might have been deleted from Dan's phone on instruction from the FBI. So if he's going to delete these messages, how many other messages did he delete or have been instructed to be deleted? The FBI is just evaporating evidence. Second, Impala is telling the FBI paid informant to lie and to implicate someone else as a federal agent. FBI delivers the patsy, Trent. Dan dutifully responds, yes, sir. Ready and willing to follow orders. Trent is known to counsel, happens to be a real human being who you're going to be putting in harm's way. Trent was on the outskirts of the Wolverine Watchmen, not charged in any crimes. So they're going to bring in a completely innocent person into this. Hasn't been charged with anything. FBI telling its paid agent, Dan, to put a target on Trent's back, specifically directing Dan to tell Pete, somebody like Trent is spying on Pete. Special agent from the FBI knew about this very issue in the state preliminary examination, and guess what? He claimed not to know about it. So he lied about it. Question from the defense attorney, who's amazing, says, and your testimony was that you were not aware of anyone in the Watchmen Club claiming that Mr. Bellar was in fact an informant or a Fed. Do you recall that testimony? Says, I do. Is that still your testimony today? Says, yeah, it is. S. Impala denied knowledge of this issue, even though he texted Dan to delete his text messages. Okay, because he says that. You were not aware of anyone claiming that he was an informant or a Fed. Yeah, not aware. Still your testimony today? Yeah, not aware. Wrong, because we see in your text messages that you were. You accused someone like Trent of being a federal agent. At the Jackson preliminary exam, Impala was then impeached with an FBI report written by his partners, S.A. Chambers, so another FBI agent, indicating complete coverage of this issue. This is not the first time that the special agent has had trouble telling the truth under oath. Impala was formally accused of twice committing perjury about a month before this investigation began by a former prosecutor, assistant U.S. attorney. After being confronted with proof that he was aware of the issue, he conceded knowledge. So before we get there, he lied under oath already. Twice committed perjury about a month before this investigation. S.A. Impala, still on the force, still investigating people, and now directly coaching FBI agents to delete their text messages and then to blame other innocent people who are not even a part of the underlying allegations to pin it on them. FBI agent. Right now. After being confronted with the proof that he was aware of this issue, he finally conceded knowledge. He already lied about this in court, but says, okay, so one of either of you or your partner wrote that, talking about his partner's conversation. And you would agree with me here. This synopsis reads that Musico then video called CHS, which is Dan, multiple times. Musico potted, I'm assuming that the theory that the confidential informant was the Fed, Paul Bellar was the informant, you, and then he also talked about other individuals. So on September 5th of 2020, it's clear from this that members of the Watchmen think that Mr. Bellar may be some kind of informant, correct? No, that's not correct. That's not correct. When you say members of the Watchmen, this is an individual conversation with Pete, so it's Pete's opinion. Who's one of the leaders of the Watchmen, correct? Yes, he says. At the same hearing, Impola recalled the story that Musico had told. He says, so Pete Musico told members of the group that in the past he'd been pulled over for speeding. He obtained officers' names, found out where he lives, done surveillance of that officer's house, thrown a Molotov cocktail at the house, and decided not to shoot the officer when he did that. The FBI here, this officer says, this defense lawyer says, the FBI is instructing a paid FBI informant to lie and to paint an innocent citizen as an undercover federal agent to a man they claim is the head of a domestic terrorist organization. They claim he's paranoid about being infiltrated by the feds, who they claim has bragged about tossing a Molotov cocktail into the police officer's house. This behavior, evidenced by the conversations between the FBI, casts a dark shadow over the credibility of this investigation, demonstrates the need for immediate disclosure. Clearly, this information is relevant to the defense, and the government should not be allowed to decide whether we get it or not. Counsel has 1,100 pages of documents. Had those for a long time. Dan was on every chat, every indicted defendant before the court. He was on encrypted chats, social media, text messages, otherwise with defendants that are now charged in state courts. Dan was everywhere. Dan, to the extent that his information was destroyed at the direction of the FBI, the defense needs all of that regarding the investigation. The defense needs this material. At this point, is self-evident. It's for the purposes of the entrapment defense. It's for the purpose of the credibility of the government witnesses. And it questions the government methods and tactics. Infuriating. Therefore, we request all this stuff. Give us all the information between all the special agents and Dan, all of the Facebook direct messages, text messages, photos, videos, and other things. Signed off on here by Michael D. Hills, who is out in Kalamazoo, Michigan, over at hillslawoffice.com. Outstanding work from Michael Hills, defense lawyer, doing very good work there. Let's take a look at some questions or some super chats. I think some of them may have come in. We're going to see what we've got over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Have a couple questions here. FBI is trash, says that the FBI creates half the terrorist plots and it can only entrap people for terrorism. That is from the FBI is trash. We have here Yummy Yum says, can't read that one. Now that's an inappropriate one. Kind of funny, though. Sergeant Bob says, I am relieved. Since the feds were involved, we can rest assured that the kidnap was planned to exploit Gretchen for sexual purposes. That's right. I wonder if Gretchen Whitmer has PTSD like AOC does, because she also thought that she was going to be sexually assaulted for some reason. FBI's back in the house says, the FBI is trying to entrap people to cover it up. They would use Signal with disappearing messages for communication. Also, Robert, you should get the Streamlab donations where you get more money. You can punish Susan and the people. So we could do that. It's just a lot of, I don't want to split it up between a number of different platforms, but I thank you for your suggestion. I also would agree, right? If the FBI is using those encrypted platforms, they could get away with a lot of different things, can't they? Sergeant Bob is here, says, I have come to love the big, beautiful spotlight. You have successfully implanted the chip into a retired cop's brain. Well done. Well, Sergeant Bob, that's all part of the master plan, right? It's a game of inches, just every little day, just like it's that jingle in your head. I can never get it out of there. It's working. Now, actually, people don't like that. Some people don't like that. I've gotten some feedback on the beautiful spotlight, and they say, Rob, it's kind of goofy. You know, you're not a goofy guy. You're sort of a serious guy. What are you doing? And I say, well, we have to shine it. So we have to say it. It's part of the show. It's just how it has to be. Sorry if you don't like it. Thunder7 says, this is unbelievable, Rob, but not surprising because the FBI are the criminals, whether it's Whitmergate, Obamagate, January 6th gate. They no longer have any credibility. Too woke and too corrupt to be reformed. Yeah, they've lost a lot of credibility in the last years, certainly. NY Renal MD says expoliation of evidence, Robert. Have agents erased text messages? Remember, it's not the weight of the evidence, it's the seriousness of the charge. We need a special prosecutor. I agree. I think this is so heinous. And if this is actually true, if they did actually get this evidence through an inadvertent disclosure, and the prosecutor's office saw this and they didn't disclose it or anything more like this, That should be such a serious repercussion against those prosecutors. I can't even begin to tell you how angry that makes me, but it wouldn't surprise me for a minute. We have here Lorenzo Greasybottom says, there's a lot of reasons these FBI guys need to be arrested, but the main reason is for stopping. Lorenzo, I can't read that. I got to be extra careful with your questions. We're going to leave it at that. The Last Villain says, sounds right. Dems outsourcing their insidious plan to others. We can't wait. Is that, I think that's in this one. We can't mandate, but businesses can. We can't subvert free speech, but social media can. We can't go against the Supreme Court, but the CDC can. We can't get these Trump people to stay in their place, but the FBI can. We can't win that election, but thank you for, following the YouTube rules there, The Last Villain. But you're absolutely right. Trump's on Hannity tonight. Hurry up, Rob. That's from Want to Know. We've got one more segment there. We're going to have to, I guess, pick up the pace if you're trying to catch that. Over on YouTube, let's see what we've got. We had some super chats come in. Sach is here. Sach, I think, is over on Locals, too. I think Sach had a very good comment on Locals, if you missed that. But says, hey, Rob, all the COVID mandates have been discussing really hit close to home today. My girlfriend is a healthy young woman who is now being forced to get the vaccine or she will be terminated. What can we do? It's a great question. You know, on these issues, I have been referring all of these questions to a local employment lawyer here in Arizona. So I would do that. If it is in Arizona, send me an email or shoot me a message and I'll tell you who that is. But if it's not in Arizona, I would reach out to a local employment lawyer. And if you just kind of Google that, you'll probably see a couple lawyers who are at the forefront of this, right? Some lawyers are really sinking their teeth into this, as they should. And they're seeing this as an opportunity to go serve people. They're saying a lot of people are going to have problems with this. I can help them through this. And they're going to talk to you about different exemptions and different contractual obligations and different safety obligations that are applicable under your local environment, right? In your local context. And so because there's so many different jurisdictions, it's hard for me to offer anything more substantive than that. I would certainly reach out to a local attorney, probably charge you a couple $100 for a evaluation, which I think is absolutely worth it in that case. Consider it a medical exam, right? Something like that, because that's unfortunately what this is turning into. That was from Sach. Patrick, thank you, Sach, for that very nice support. We have Patrick here says, how about the FBI arresting the guy who exposed Omar for immigration fraud by marrying her brother? The DNA evidence shows and exposed her. I saw that headline. I think, wasn't the DNA like swabbed from a cigarette butt from her? So the story is that Ilhan Omar married her brother, allegedly, right? Don't want to say stuff that is not true. And then some group did a report where they actually went and they got a DNA sample from a cigarette butt and also from her alleged husband, and they compared the two, and apparently they're related, according to that headline. But I don't know that for a fact, so go read that. We have Eddie says, you know, Rob, it's not paranoia if they really are after you. Forget the Alamo. Remember Waco. Yeah, in Texas. Yeah, good point there, Eddie Oliver. Thank you for that support and for chiming in here. We have one more here from Locals. Says, John Halgreen says, the modern FBI is so disappointing. As a young man, my home was raided by the FBI. The agents were very nice and careful to respect our rights. So weird to see this behavior by law enforcement. John, thank you, John, for that. John helps me out by putting in the necessary turns of phrase or pauses or articulation emphasis on the reading of the comments, which is great because I need a little variety on this. Thank you, John. Please continue it. We have Eddie Oliver is also chiming in, says, you know, this case is weird like a bunch of insurrectionists being charged with nothing but trespassing. Weird. Yeah. Same FBI. Yeah. Kind of a bunch of nothing burger there. A lot of malfeasance, a lot of open questions, a lot of discovery problems, them not wanting to hand over evidence that the defense is entitled to. Weird. Same FBI agent, same FBI department, right? The same FBI in both cases. Brody Z says, tweak the info for your propaganda. Yeah, so tweak the info for your propaganda. That's from Brody Z. He might be talking about my propaganda. And I'm always looking for tweakings, for tweaks. Yeah, I'm always looking to improve. So I'm open to suggestions. All right, those were great questions, all from watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and tremendous support from YouTube as well. Big shout outs to Brody, Eddie again, Patrick, Sach in the house, Kelly, Selnow, and Eddie Oliver. Again, really appreciate all of that love. We have Scumpy is my daddy. Is in the house, which is a great name. Says, thank you for everything you do. Trust in Gruler. Thank you, Scumpy. Is my daddy in the house? I appreciate that. All right, and so that is it for that segment, my friends. We're going to go ahead and move on into the final segment of the day. Fake vaccine cards. This is becoming quite a problem here for federal agents and local officials all around the country who have been very, very aggressive in making sure that you get the jab. Now that many people don't want to do that, they're turning to alternative proofs of verification, given the fact that many different cities in this country are now making it mandatory that you're vaccinated. Otherwise, you can't participate in that city. You don't get to go to the bars. You don't get to go to the restaurants. In some cases in New York, you don't even get to go to the grocery store unless you can provide proof of vaccination. We talked about the rules on the show yesterday, and so people are looking elsewhere. We know that freedom is going to always find a way to sort of escape from totalitarian maniacs, and so people are turning to fake vaccine cards. And the feds, who are very much in support of making sure that elected bureaucrats that have no knowledge of your medical history continue to pontificate about you taking a medical shot that is still in experimental status, they are going to support the jab no matter what, because they're the federal government. They fall in line with the rest of everybody else. So federal agents are now seizing thousands of fake COVID vaccine cards that are destined for locations across the U.S. Posted in the Washington Post a couple days ago, bundles of counterfeit coronavirus vaccine cards printed with the CDC logo have been shipped from China. So China sends over the virus and then they send over the fake vaccine cards going all around the United States as some unvaccinated people try to evade restrictions, which is now, I think, making you a terrorist or something. U.S. Customs and Border Patrol said on Friday that they seized thousands of fake vaccine cards passing through Memphis, a shipping hub, saying that the vaccinations are free and available everywhere. If you don't want to get a vaccine, that's your decision, but don't order a counterfeit card. Waste my officer's time. Can you believe that? Break the law and misrepresent yourself. I always like that line from the police. Don't waste my time with these charges. What are you talking about? You're sitting there handing out speeding tickets all day. You're a Customs and Border Patrol official. You're supposed to look for this stuff. What are you talking about? Okay. So, how about not wasting business owners' time with mandates that they have to apply to their employees and their customers and then now be enforcing every time somebody comes through the door? How about not wasting our time? How about that? Maybe a good place to start. Here's what they look like. So, pretty much looks like a regular vaccination card. They seized thousands of these things as they passed through Memphis. And so, excellent work there, boys and girls at Border Patrol. The agents confiscated 121 packages, 3,000 vaccine cards. Officers realized the cards were fake because the packages were not sent by the CDC. Brilliant. And another medical organization. The forms had errors, including misspellings, unfinished words, and incorrect Spanish translations. So we have a lot of brain power there. Making or buying a counterfeit card violates federal laws. We already talked about that. 5 years in prisons because the FBI is now warning about that. We talked about that last week on the show. As a number of coronavirus cases has swelled again, the spread of variants like Delta in many places have been causing requirements of proof of vaccination in order to go into public spaces. San Francisco did it, New York City did it, and includes requirements for patrons indoors and even gyms. Same things going on in Chicago, a Chicago pharmacist now. So those came over from China. China sent the virus and then China sent over the fake vaccination cards. So now a Chicago pharmacist is also in the game. A pharmacist who works at a pharmacy, which dispatches drugs, that probably has the vaccine, is coming up with fake cards, says that another gentleman by the name of Tang Zhao, don't know if he's from China also, sold 125 official CDC vaccine cards for $10 each. This guy's going to make $1,200 off these fake cards. Works at an unidentified chain. Cards are increasingly important as more businesses now are freaked out. 12 counts of theft of government property during his indictment. Faces 10 years prison on each count. Okay, look at that. 12 counts times 10 years, 120 years, folks. I talked about COVID crimes here. 120 years for $1,200, for $1,250. Okay, so you can do the math on that. Not really worth it. We take seriously and will vigorously investigate any criminal offense, said Attorney General Kenneth Polite. Okay, so that's out of Chicago. Now, they're sort of cracking down on it. And, why is this the case? Well, because they want you to get the vaccine. They don't want you to be able to go and engage in the economy unless you get the vaccine. So New York passes a new law, and so now they've created a very strong incentive to go make sure you get the jab. Now, if you want to do that, you go and do that, and you get to participate in real society again. I'm a real boy again. Yay, this is amazing. And so you get to participate like a New Yorker, like a real New Yorker. Wow. And if you're not vaccinated, you don't. You don't get to go to the grocery store or meet your family at a restaurant or go to a bar or go get a haircut or any of those other things that are now limited. So you might want to identify an alternative. You might be one of the 60 to 70% of African Americans in New York City who just doesn't want to get the vaccine, period. And you, as an American, have a God-given right to deny that request, that demand, that mandate. And so you find an alternative way to go about this so that you can continue to live your life, and they theoretically could charge you with all sorts of different COVID crimes. We've covered many of them. This guy was selling them. This guy's going to get theoretically a couple of years, but maximum, the penalty that he could face, 120 years. Over 125 CDC cards, $10 a piece, $1,200. So you're going to see a lot more of that. FBI is also warning, if you were the person who bought one of these cards, 5 years for you. 120 for him, 5 for you. Why is that? So that they can really push you back into the system. If you're trying to get out of this, if you're trying to escape some of these mandates, by God, that's not going to be allowed. The system has spoken. They're going to nudge you right back in there, and they're going to use the strong arm of the U.S. Justice Department in order to do that. And so it's not over, right? COVID is not over until you start complying, and complying swiftly. This is here to stay. Already talked about this. The CDC extended all of the moratoriums out until October. We know that the student loans have been pushed back to next year in January. Now we have another COVID extension again. We're going to go into 2022 in season 3 of COVID. But we know that at least the masks are going to be around with us for some time. Thomson Reuters is reporting here that the U.S. is also going to continue the coronavirus pandemic. They're going to extend it. They're extending the pandemic through January 18th so that they can continue to make you wear masks. So yet another mask mandate coming out of Joe Biden's administration, extending this all the way through January 18th of 2022. In a call with the TSA, they talked about this. The current order expires in September. But folks, they're not done with this pandemic yet. There's a lot more that they need to do. And so they're going to extend the pandemic again, more extensions, just like the CDC. And in fact, even the first round of vaccines apparently weren't enough, because now the U.S. is also going to authorize booster shots for the vaccines. AP is reporting here this afternoon that more protection is coming after struggling for months, says the AP from Zeke Miller, to persuade Americans to get the vax. U.S. health officials could soon face a fresh challenge, talking vaccinated people into getting booster shots to gain longer-term protection. Early this week, U.S. health authorities are expected to recommend an extra dose of the vaccine for all Americans 8 months after they get their second shot. According to 2 people who spoke to the AP on condition of anonymity, this means that the biggest vaccine drive in history is about to get even more extensive. You're not done, folks. If you got that vaccine, you aren't done. Hello, you're on the subscription service. You're going to get one every 6 to 8 months. Just shows up, just like Netflix used to. Now we have the means. The move is being driven by both the highly contagious variant and preliminary evidence that the vaccine's effects start dropping within a couple months. That's from the AP. Now, of course, this is not medical information. Please go check with the CDC for official guidance, but this is just speculation from the AP, which is a legitimate news source according to YouTube. On Monday, Pfizer and its partner announced they submitted data to the FDA to support a booster shot for the general public. Pfizer, they studied a small group of people, said that a third dose does help a little bit. They're working on a larger study, though. Kind of a small study. Americans who received the earliest doses of Pfizer are approaching the 8-month mark. And so now it's time to sort of see whether it's working or not. There is a concern that the vaccine may start to wane in its effectiveness, and that's why a third shot may be appropriate. And it says here, finally, that the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are administered in 2 doses. And so they're trying to determine what to do about the boosters. And so, back about that subscription service vaccine model, it's a pretty good model if you can get it, because what you do is you get the government to make things mandatory, and you can't engage in the economy unless you follow the rules. And so sort of have a captive market, don't you? Be like if I went to a prison and everybody had only one choice for a lawyer. Me, happen to be here. And you have to sign up with me and you have to pay for me. And it's all just done. And if you don't, well, you're just kind of screwed. You don't get access to any of your liberties anymore. You don't get access to a lawyer unless you take that one. And in fact, if you don't want one, if you want that other lawyer, too bad, you get that one. You don't get any personal choices about it. So the same type of thing is happening in many parts of this country. You have a captive market and you get them into the program. Every time it's time for a little bit of a re-up, a little bit of a boost, you just come and you use that strong arm of the CDC. It's time, everybody. Line up like good little cattle and make sure you go get it. Now, the reason why it might be, fleeting. Some people might say, well, it's because they care about you. They care about your health. They care about grandma. They care about ending this pandemic once and for all. Even though I think the conversation about COVID-0 is not even happening anymore. Kind of here to stay. We're going to be dealing with rolling variants, rolling boosters, rolling vaccines, rolling new technologies. Why might that be? Is it about saving lives? Is it about finally putting this stuff to shame, ending the pandemic? Or could it be about something else? Now, I was just poking around some financial numbers here from Moderna, one of the more popular vaccines here in the United States and elsewhere around the country. And we can take a look at some of their numbers. And I am not very smart and sophisticated like NSA advisor Jake Sullivan, who's very educated. I just can only rely on very simple numbers. And so if you go to Google, you can try this right now if you want. You can type in on Google Moderna profits. We'll go through a couple numbers here. You'll notice that if you type that into Google, it pulls up this nice little sheet, nice analysis here. And first and foremost, right, I love profits. I love capitalism. I think that profits are a good thing. I think that free markets are a good thing and they work well. But we're not really talking about a free market here. We're talking about sort of this pseudo government mixture of mandates, CDC requirements. We've got all sorts of weird things happening here. But let's take a look at some of these numbers. We have here, so in September of 2022, we'll take a look at this first column. What Google allows you to do is sort of go this way and check out all the dates up into the present time. So from September to December to March to June. And we're talking about quarterly financial numbers. You'll see that their stock was up 7.4% today when I took this screenshot, up at 400 right now, which is pretty good. But back in January, we can forget about these stock numbers for now. Back in September of 2020, last year, sort of right in the maybe the climax of the pandemic, right leading up to the election, you'll notice that in September, that quarter, $157 million. $157 million, which is nothing to scoff at, but their net income was minus $233 million. Not doing well as a company. Revenue made 157, net income minus 233. And you say, well, Rob, hello, it's a pharmaceutical company. They're doing all sorts of R&D right now. They're investing everything into building up these vaccines. They're doing all of this complicated mRNA research, blah, blah, blah. It's a lot of work. And it's basically impossible to do this anyways. It's such an accelerated timeline. So of course they're going to be in the red. Okay, that's fine. You maybe sort of acknowledge that. They've got $1.5 billion cash on hand, so they're looking pretty flush. They can easily weather a $233 million loss. They know that they're going to make it up on the back end. They're not hurting. They're not going to go bankrupt. So then we get 1 quarter goes by. We're going to go from September to December, 3 months. And watch what happens to these numbers. We're going to go from revenue of $157 million over to $570 million. Okay, 157, 570 million, and you can look year over year. Just from last year, it's up about 4,000% from 1 year. Now we still see net income is not so good because they're probably still spending some money. Net cash on hand hasn't really changed all that much. It went from 1.5 billion to 1.2 billion, and you can see some profits are still not really good, right? Minus 50% profit margins. Now, also recall, on December 20th, this was when the vaccine came out. This is when Joe Biden got it. This is when Kamala Harris got it. And so we're going to see what happens as soon as the vaccine starts hitting the markets. Let's go over to March 2021. And remember, right now in December, we've got 570 million in revenue. 570 million. Now, 1 quarter, fast forward, what does our revenue go to? 1.94 billion. Okay. Now, there's not even enough nines here on the year over year analysis comparison to the year before. It's broken. The analysis is broken. They've made too much revenue. And so we go from 570 million in 3 months over to 1.94 billion. Net income, 1.22 billion, and we have a 63% profit margin on that. 63% profit margin, which is obviously significant. Okay, if you're a small business owner, you know that those margins are ridiculous. Very, very, very good margins, which is why they have a 1.2 billion in net income. So now folks, 3 months go by. So from December to March, we get 3 short months. And then we're going to take a look, another 3 short months, another quarter. And in June, we go from 1.9 billion in revenue all the way up to 4.35. We more than double again in 1 quarter in June. And remember, we're now going into one final quarter. We'll see what their final numbers look like. 63% profit margin, net income $2.78 billion. Cash on hand, $5.6 billion. Okay, up from a lot. So a lot of money being made there. A lot of incentives to continue this mechanism, isn't it? The subscription model. It works. It's a good model if you can get it. Let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. See if anybody wants to chime in on this topic. We have Sergeant Bob says, it's my favorite mafioso, Al Capone, were alive. I'm a native Chicago guy. He would be all over the COVID card enterprise. Easier than bootlegging booze or running houses of ill repute. Yeah, all you need is a printer, which we know, according to Kamala Harris, that a lot of people of color just don't have access to. Because I'm a white person with white privilege, I've got actually a pretty powerful printer here at our law firm. So, theoretically, I would have access to this, which is very unfair. So I appreciate that, Sergeant Bob. Robert Barnes has a letter on locals. Why are you not getting the shot to give to your boss? Somebody posted that. Don't know who that was. So Robert Barnes, yeah, they've got a community here, a sister community on locals. I think it's vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Go check that out. They got a very vibrant community over there. And so certainly check them out. We've got Want to Know says, you're a business owner. Who pays for training to detect fake cards? What happens if you accept a fake card without knowing if you know? So we don't have that rule in Arizona yet. If they do, I'll have to deal with it when we get there. But you pay for it as the business. That's the point. You've got to get your staff trained up. You've got to get them compliant. If there are any violations, apparently it falls on either the staff support or on the business owner, right? We still don't know what enforcement's going to look like yet because all this stuff is rolling out. But the businesses pay for it. The government doesn't pay for it. They pass the buck to you and us and me. We have Angie says, Israel has 70% of their population vaccinated, and apparently the cases have been rising steadily. The government wants people to get a third jab. Another proof that this madness will never stop. Yeah, once you're on the third one, you're just going to get it delivered. It'll be like a subscription service. Like you get those little boxes delivered to your house, like Amazon. All right. Kareem says, my favorite Star Wars quote, they win by making people think they are alone. We are not alone. Mass non-compliance is the key to end this pandemic. That's from Kareem. I think you're right on that. Legal non-compliance. Legal non-compliance. It's creating friction where they're expecting none. And enough of that, and they'll get the hint. NY says, all of these efforts for mandates are from politicians, not from medical practitioners. Take notice of that. Whether vaccination is an appropriate measure should be an individual decision. It should be based on 1, whether someone has a protective antibodies recovering from COVID. Number 2, whether the risks are outweighed by the benefits. Finally, the booster push is just vapor. Half the FDA panel who approved Pfizer vaccine so far are skeptical about its need. That's according to NY. This is not medical information on this channel. Go check the CDC. If the CDC says take 55 shots and shove them in your eyeballs, you should do that because they're the CDC and that's who YouTube looks to as our Lord and purveyor of the law. We also have Bumalickit says COVID vaccine card. How about basic voter ID? Why is the government pushing the vaccine so much? Getting paranoid. What's with the vaccine? Well, it's the CDC. They say it's everything you need. Everything you need and more. In a needle. That's beautiful. Soul Viking says, there aren't 4 lines on the vaccine card for nothing. How many classes of people will they be creating with the unjabbed, previously fully jabbed, and the booster jabbed? I don't know. All sorts of permutations. You're going to have, all of the different variables that somebody's going to have to keep track of. Want to know says, are bribes a tax-deductible expense? I am not a tax lawyer. Don't pretend to be. But no, they're not deductible. Don't bribe anybody. Lorenzo says, I consider myself pretty moderate, but I think these vax passes and COVID restrictions in general are going too far. That's from Lorenzo Greasy Bottoms. Very appropriate, very nice comment there. Thank you, Lorenzo. Says, yeah, they are going to. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. 100% right. Major says, I've said this from the beginning, this annual vaccine is coming. One of my theories is that Big Pharma was losing the flu vaccine argument, had to implement this together to tighten their grasp of control over the American public. It's a good comment, Major. I think you're astute and very observant. We have over here, we've got Go says, so we went from defense contractors to COVID contractors. I'd say all in on Moderna, but I'm apparently late to the game. That's from Ghost. Yeah, if you would have dumped in on the stock market back then, that would have been a good pick. We have Pato says, Robert, this COVID pandemic has started to remind me of the AIDS scare back in the 80s and 90s. People were scared to share drinking fountains, bathrooms, etc. with HIV positive people. Now people are scared to participate in everyday life with unvaxxed people. And we're not even sick, is what he says. It's a great point. I know. And if you're so gung-ho about the vaccines and you love them and you think that they're God's gift to everything and they're going to solve everything and you get it, then what are you so freaked out about what everybody else is doing? Because it's going to save you. Rochelle said so. All right, let's see. Any other questions? I saw a super chat just came in. Eddie Oliver is here, says, under Sharia law, your hand can be cut off for selling fake COVID vaccine cards. The Taliban did nothing wrong. That's from Eddie. Yeah, look, and probably the mask mandates. Well, if you're female, the good news about Afghanistan under the Taliban is you don't have to worry about masks anymore. No more mask mandates there because your entire body is masked up. You have a burqa now, so you don't have to worry about. That's probably why they don't have any COVID in the Taliban. Did you know that the Taliban? Did you see them? They were in the presidential palace. No masks, not a single mask. Why? Why is that? It's probably the burqas. Yeah. I mean, if Joe Biden's going to be double masking and wrapping his entire body in cellophane and bubble wrap, maybe the burqas are next. Maybe those are going to be coming to the United States. Yeah. Rather than two masks, you just have a full body mask. It makes sense. Yeah. Well, apparently none of them are sick because they're just taking over countries left and right. So apparently no problems with that. So maybe they're onto something over there with the Taliban. Doodle Doo says, I think there is another conspiracy afoot with these fakes vax passport cards, maybe even sabotage. What a perfect way to show the public that paper cards aren't trustworthy, paving the way to a biological passport that can be tracked digitally by the government, which will probably be combined with one of these two new booster shots that will be continually required, which will continue pouring money into the pockets of the pharma companies. I've been reading Revelation too much, which is, of course, in the Bible. Maybe I've been burned by a little company called Purdue, and I know personally what these companies will do for money, especially if you take something away called liability. That's from Doodle Doo. Yep, my family got burned by Purdue, too. I made a video about that, the injustice that happened there. They all paid a couple $100 million in fines. Meanwhile, we've got thousands, tens of thousands of dead people in this country because of a pharmaceutical company that was shoving opioids down everybody's mouths and saying that it was perfect. Doctors all over the country were prescribing these things. These are fine for you. Everybody says so. That's why we're just handing them out like Skittles. Guess what happens? You fast forward 20 years and the country is suffering from an opioid epidemic that takes people away from families. I happen to know that from firsthand experience. And where's the liability there? They get slapped with some fines and a couple, modest penalties, nothing really serious. And life goes on because they're part of the upper class. And so, yeah, you might look at Moderna and, some of these other companies with a little bit of skepticism if you have looked around and see how they have treated the American people and people at large in general over the last century or so. A good comment there. That was from Doodle Doo. Saw another one come in from Brian B. Says here, will the Taliban allow Afghanistan women to self-identify as men? It's a good question. Yeah, that's a really complicated one. You'd have to work through that. If they identified as men, I don't think so. I don't think that they would allow them to compete in the Taliban army. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. They're pretty progressive, though. Maybe soon enough they'll get there. I'm not real sure. Brody Z says, What is the end goal to all of this? Compliance? Yeah, I think it is compliance. I think it really is, philosophically, from a very high level, I think it's the system clawing at people from bailing out of the system. They're doing everything they can to stop people from going to crypto, to stop people from leaving the country, to stop people from, becoming non-compliant with the government. As the institutions continue to fail around the country, people are going to start wanting to withdraw from a lot of the traditional societal institutions. They don't want that to happen. So all of this is to keep people locked into the system on a philosophical level, I think is where I'd go with that. It's a great question. Justin F. super chatted, says, I don't understand why the government thinks they can just legislate COVID away on a whim with the vaccine mandates. It's because they're the government. They don't know what else to do. And remember, these people have to solve something, right? It would be impossible for a bureaucrat somewhere to just sit there and not do anything, just to sort of let things play, right? Or to mitigate. Hey, COVID's here. We sort of tried lockdowns. We tried all of these mandates. We tried controlling this thing. Didn't work out very well. So now we're just going to have to live with it, America. Get healthy. Get your vaccine if you want. We're open for business. Get back to work. What would that mean? That would mean that the CDC is sort of done. Fauci's kind of done. Biden is kind of using this issue as a leverage to get a bunch of other garbage passed. If he just says deal with it, well, it's done. You lose all of that political power. And so the system continues to justify the system. They're going to continue to try to do a bunch of stuff. I don't think it's about actually making COVID go away. I think it's about furthering a political agenda. And they've got a basically endless excuse. They have a credit card with no limit on it. It's COVID. They can run all over the Constitution as they're doing with the CDC and elsewhere. Changed all of the election rules leading up to it, changed what the CDC can do with private property, and the list goes on. It is troubling. But my friends, that is it for the questions on this segment for the day. A lot of great questions, a lot of love and support over there on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. They're chatting away. Farmer's Daughters over there, TOS Forever. We have Chris John is over there. We have Thunder 7, Cat Crap Fever, along with several others chatting at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Over on YouTube, big shout outs to all the super chats. Thank you so much for all of that extra support here today. Shout outs to Justin F, Brian B. We have Brody Z, Eddie Oliver. Shout outs to Scumpy is my daddy. We've got Brody Z, Eddie Oliver several times. Thank you, Eddie. Soch with a nice one. Patrick, Kelly Selnow, Garp 1966. And many other people chatting away over there. Eddie Oliver with one final one says, our governor just tested positive for COVID today. And you know what? He's not crying like a little wussy. Hashtag Texas proud. Hashtag Texas strong. You know, I'm actually going to be in Texas in like a month, provided that I'm allowed to travel anywhere. But we'll see that. I think I'm going to be in San Antonio there. So it's good to hear from you, Eddie. Sarah Ann also says, how nice to see you. Been a while. Sarah Ann is reconnecting over with us here. That's Sarah Ann, who is with another super chat. So thank you for that. And that, my friends, is it for the show for the day. Got through a lot of material. I really appreciate you all being here and participating in the show. I want to remind you that you can sign up if you want to be a part of it over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Shout out to new supporters over there. ZW Trawl just signed up over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Signed up for the year. Looking forward to having you and connecting with you. Also, shout outs to Deadmau5, Ref Fanalator, Juta M-Kit, Daversec, Shifty Shift 503 Unlimited from Portland, and Mary B, along with The Real Patriot. Sign up at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and then you can join us on our next monthly Locals meetup via Zoom, Saturday, August 28th, 2021, 7 p.m. Eastern time. It's just a short hour. It's just a little bit of a meet and greet. Just get to put names to faces. It's a lot of fun. Get to talk about the show. Get to talk about what you're doing in your lives. And it's a good time to build a little bit of the community that we talk so much about here on the show. And so come check that out Saturday, August 28th, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And that, my friends, is it for the show. We're going to be back here same time, same place tomorrow. We're going to do it all again. There's going to be a lot more to get to. So I want to make sure you're with us. It's at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody else, have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.